Morning, fellow scrappers. The video that you're about to watch is the yield experiment on the copper cells that we had built. And it is an experiment. This video was filmed over approximately 4 weeks, and I thought long and hard about whether to just throw all of that footage into the garbage or to actually edit and highly edit and post this video. One of the reasons that I was concerned about posting this video is because in the end you will see that while we did get a fairly good bit of copper out of this, it really was not what I was hoping for. That being said, one of the things about an experiment is that you get things wrong and you adjust, and then you try again, and you adjust and you try again. Bear in mind the reason WD-40 is named WD-40 is because it was their 40th attempt to get it right. So in this video, and I tried to keep it brief as I can through the editing process. I don't really know how long it's going to be. I haven't edited it yet, but as I go through this, you're going to see some mistakes, some glaring mistakes. Mistakes that we rectify as we go through the video and try again. As far as a pure experiment and getting actual numbers that we wanted to see, we did not get that at the end. We did figure out what we did wrong. We did figure out how to get it right. And going forward, maybe I'll make another video on this, but again, I have 4 weeks tied up into it. Although now that I know what's happening, it won't be an experiment this time. It'll just be an actual let's go and show you what the actual yield will be. I will show you at the end of the video what our wheat yield was, even with all the issues that we had. So that being said, buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. Videos. So today we are going to be doing a yield experiment on our copper cells. Actually, it's going to be a week-long experiment. So we'll be setting up today and starting out, and then next week we will go ahead and finish this up. I'll put it all into one video so you don't have to wait a week to see the end results. But what I have is my 4 copper cells. If you watched my first video, these are my original 2 copper cells. Those are the 2 new ones I built in the most recent video. And I'm just wanting to get a feel for what we're actually getting for yield out of these cells. So I did make a couple of changes to the original 2. You'll see they now have fill holes as well, which you saw those in the second video. And I went with the newer style basket. These fit into my old cells just like those coffee filter ones did. It's simply for ease of getting things in and out is why I did it. But so we're going to go ahead and take a look. We've got 4 bars here. These are bars I melted quite some time ago, and I can almost guarantee you that even though this is copper wiring that was used to make these, it's not pure, and that's why I used the copper purification cell. The amount of sludge that has come off the bars that I have done leads me to believe that, yeah, if you're melting down copper wire and saying it's pure copper, trust me, it is not. So we're going to go ahead and weigh these all up. I've got each cell. We're going to weigh the bar before it goes in there. We are going to run these for a week, and then we're going to check what we have when we get done, and for copper yield, and we're going to check and see what's left of the bars, the anodes, when we're done. So we're going to fire up the scale here. So I'll get ahead and get these hooked up, and we will go from there. All right, so we've got all 4 cells running. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Our first 2 cells, we're pulling 12 volts, 5 amps. Now that is set for 12 volts, 5 amps. Sorry, it's pulling a half amp. But it is set to 5, so as that goes up, and the same thing over here, this is set to 12 volts, 5 amps. This one's running 12 volts, 0.86, so we're going to let them go, and we will come back next week and see what we have gotten for yield. Just a bit of an update on the yield performance. Today is Sunday. It is about 10:30 in the morning. Cells 1 and 2 are drawing 0.64 amps, which is up a little bit from yesterday when we started this. And cells 3 and 4 are drawing 1.02 amps, which is also up a little bit. I did top all the cells off. I don't have an answer for this yet. Normally, these two cells here, when I had used them before, and this was with the coffee filter set up in them, they would pull about 2.5 amps pretty readily. And I'm not seeing that, and I don't know if that's because there's not enough surface area with just those 8 small holes that we drilled into these cups. But I'm not positive. I know there's reaction going on, but we may have to eliminate this design, go back to our previous design on the filters. Well, I just kind of keep an eyeball on it, and I can tell there's copper coming off of the bars, but what exactly is going on with this low amperage, I don't know. So we'll take a look at it again tomorrow morning and see what it's doing then. It is Tuesday morning. We're back here at the copper purification cells. Just got done topping them off with water again. Problem is we're still running about the exact same amperages as we were yesterday. We're 0.72 on cells 1 and 2, 1.09 on cells 3 and 4. I do believe we're going to end up rerunning this experiment, taking out these baskets and going back to the coffee filter baskets. But we'll let it run till the end of the week and see what happens, and then I think we're going to redo this exact experiment next week. Same thing, we're just going to use the other baskets and see if our amperage will come up, because it's not, and I haven't pulled any of these open, but I mean there's copper that's in our baskets that is not going out and plating. And I think it's honestly because of the small holes. So, like I said, we'll run it for the whole week, see what our results are, and then we'll go back and give it another shot. Good morning. It is Wednesday. It is about 6:45. This is day 4 of our yield test. Came out once again, topped up the fluid in these. You can see our amperage on cells 1 and 2, 6.695 of an amp. And on cells 3 and 4, 1.04 amps. Which tells me right now that this has failed. I would write this off today and start over. We're going to redo this. We're going to go back to the coffee filter baskets that I was using before, because the only thing that's really changed is the baskets, especially on cells 1 and 2. You know, we just built 3 and 4, but on cells 1 and 2, the only thing that's changed is the basket. So I'd go ahead and just call this failed at this point in time, but I'm going to continue to run this till Saturday because this is a yield experiment. So we're going to run it to Saturday and get our yield. We'll check in on it Thursday and Friday again as well, just to see what's happening. But yeah, we're going back to the old baskets and we're going to see how that one works. Alright, we'll take a look at this again tomorrow. We're back again. It's Thursday morning. Still on our copper purification cell. Again, no real change in our amperage draw on these. And not a whole lot of activity going on these bars. There's been some, but not a whole lot. I did get to thinking last night, shy of the baskets, there is one other thing that has changed significantly from how I normally do this, and that is the amount of copper that's in the basket. And I do know that surface area does have an impact on amperage. So, before we completely scrap these new baskets and go back to the old coffee filter style one, we may rerun this next week for the next week, and I might throw a second bar in there or larger bars to get more surface area into the solution, and we'll see if that changes the amperage draw at all. But for right now, we got tomorrow morning is Friday, and then we got Saturday, and we'll tear this all down and see where we're at. Okay, it is Sunday morning, and I have pulled the lids off the copper cells here, and this is what we got. And I'm not even going to bother harvesting them because there is not enough in these, as you can see, to even scrape them. And that is a result of our amperage issues. I'm going to go ahead and call this experiment a fail. But I will show you that, I mean, we've been pulling copper off the bars. That's what this one looks like. We're just not pushing it through the baskets at all. And I don't want to sit here and try to redo this. There's number 3. So, but a lot of it, I mean, that can't all be impurities in there. I'm thinking it's because of our baskets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, everything staying the same, I'm going to put these filters into the coffee filter baskets that I was using. And we're going to continue to run this. I want to see if the amperage will pick up on it. If not, like I said, I used to use a lot more copper in these. So maybe I just don't have enough surface area. So I'm going to get this all set back up. I'm going to use our coffee filter baskets again. And I'm just going to keep going with it. So we'll check this out next Saturday here and see how we end up with it then. So we've gone ahead and replaced our original baskets, these here, back to our coffee filters that we were using before. And we're going to run this for another week, but we can already see that's a whole lot better. That's where we need to be. 2.5 amps. 2.2. We're going to go ahead. I haven't even fired this one up yet. These were the 2 new cells that I'd made. And we're going to go ahead and hit this one fired up. And boom, 3.36. So perfect. That's what we're looking for. I don't think this will actually run for a whole week before it eats them bars to the point where my clamps are going to be dropped down in there. So I'm going to run this for a week just so I can clean everything back up again. And we're going to redo this whole thing with fresh bars after, like I said, I'll let this run for a week. We'll clean it all up, and then we're going to start all over again and try it with fresh stuff. Now that we're pulling the kind of amperage that we should be. That's what we want to see. And I think the reason that this one is a little bit lower, if you saw the color of the fluid, I think it was actually depleting the copper sulfate out of these two, because it was not getting enough copper from the bars down in there. So, like I said, I'm going to run this just to get these bars whittled down and we'll go from there, and we'll give this experiment another retry. Gonna touch back one more time. Because we've already blown this experiment out of the water, we failed. I decided to go ahead and toss a little bit of extra copper into these containers because our weight isn't going to come out right anyway. So I did throw a little extra in there just to see where we're at, and you can see just what I threw into those two jumped at to 3.7, and we're maxed out over here. We're at 5 amp. So yes, two things we've learned. We need to have that ability for those ions to cross through, and these filters, or these baskets with those small holes in there, just not enough area. And then, yeah, the more copper, the more contact area the solution has with the copper, the more amperage it's going to pull, the better it's going to plate. And just for giggles and grins, I'm going to let this go. Like I said, our yield is completely off, but we're going to come back 5 days from now. I'm going to harvest these. You saw what was in our bowls when I pulled the lids off of these and showed you. We're going to come back next Saturday. I'm going to harvest these, and we're going to see what is in there for copper. The weight's not going to matter because, again, we've blown the experiment out of the water by adding more and not weighing it and changing everything up. But you're going to see a significant difference in the copper growth. All right, well, it is Saturday. Our copper cell yield experiment has been running now for 2 weeks. I wanted to show you this before I harvested out the cells, that once I switched back to the original coffee filter baskets and threw a little more copper into the baskets so we had a bigger surface area to work with, this has actually worked out rather well. I'm able to get my 2.5 amps that I want. This one here at 7.25 volts, and this one over here was right around 6. Now, these have been running for the last 24 hours. If I was to go ahead and add a little fluid water back to these cells, because they are going to be down a little bit, that would jump back up to my 2.5 amps that I'm looking for. But it tends to drop overnight when these are running. I am going to, we've already established our first experiment here was a fail. We're going to go ahead and rerun this in this same video now that we know the errors of my ways. I'm going to clean this all up. I'm going to harvest these cells, and we're going to start all over, and we're going to run them for another week and hopefully get some real results this time. One thing I did, I just wanted to go ahead and show you these before I went ahead and harvested the copper out of them. So this is number one. I still didn't get the plating down in the bottom that I'd like to have seen, but that is our pure copper. This one's number 2. Number 3. And number 4. The reason that copper is darker around the top, that is where the water level goes down overnight, and it gets darker there, and I'm assuming that's oxidation of some sort or other. But yeah, I'm going to get these cleaned up, and we're going to start all over again.
First of all, I want to apologize for the last part of this video, the last segment. Apparently I forgot to turn off my air filter system and my radio, so my apologies for the noise involved with that. While I was getting everything cleaned up and ready to go for the second attempt here at our yield experiment, I decided to go ahead and seek professional help. Nope, not that kind. I'm still crazy. But I did go on the old interweb where all the experts are located and check out what exactly a guy should be running for voltage and amperage. So the recommendation for copper plating, which is essentially what I'm doing here, is we're copper plating the copper from the bar onto the container, pot, whatever. Recommended voltage not to go above 6 volts. I've exceeded that all the time. One interesting thing I did learn is if you've seen the dark brown edges at the very top, that is not oxidization, that is heat stress from too high a voltage. Probably why I end up evaporating as much of my electrolyte as I do. Amperage varies depending on what you're using for solution and what you are using for surface area for your cathode, which in our case is the pots. So there is a formula for figuring that out. I am not a scientist and I'm not a mathematician, so again, I consulted the old interweb for doing the math and science for me on this. But recommendation is 0.1 amp for every 1 square inch that you are trying to plate. So I went ahead and I found a place on the internet that will calculate the surface area of a cylinder, and I got those numbers, and then it's pretty easy to take that times 0.1 for amps. So here's what we came up with when I did those numbers. So my first cell is 3.5 inches tall, 8 inches in diameter, which gives me 138 square inches that I am trying to plate. Now, according to them, we want to be at basically 13.8 amps. My second copper cell is going to be, it's 3 inches tall, 7 inches in diameter, so we're looking at 104 square inches, or 10.4 amps. And then 3 and 4, because those are identical, we're looking at 137 square inches that we're trying to plate at 13.7 amps. So the lesson I'm learning here is there is no way that these power sources I have are going to hit the amperage that I want for perfection. Of course, again, we're not looking for perfection on this. So they are capable of putting out 5 amps, and that is what we're going to try to achieve. But that being said, we're going to try to achieve that with a voltage less than 6 volts, probably closer to 2 is the preferred. So that's how we're going to run this experiment this time around. We are going to go ahead and set them at 2 volts, and we're going to see what kind of a yield we get running just 2 volts and what kind of amperage that is going to entail. The amperage is solely determined by the resistance of our electrolyte, the surface area on which we are trying to plate to, and the distance between our anode and our cathode. So the way these are set up, we're not going to be able to change the distance. We're not going to be able to change the surface area. The electrolyte, as far as I can tell, I am super saturated on that. As you've watched me mix this stuff up, you'll note I pour crystals in and I add the water and I shake, and there's still undissolved crystals in the electrolyte. So that's not going to get any stronger than what it is. And to be honest with you, I really have never noticed it weakening over time either, because the copper bars replenish the copper in the copper sulfate as the copper plates to the cathode, and that's science way above my head, and I'm not going to try to explain it any harder than that. But so what we're going to do now is I've got 4 new bars that we're going to put in these. They're larger bars, so they're going to have more of a surface area, so that should help with our amperage as well. As you noticed on the last segment, when I put more copper in, the amperage went up. So, but I've got some larger bars we're going to do this with. Let's get those weighed up. We'll get them in, and we will run this for a week. And I'm not going to do a daily on this. Shouldn't have to, unless I see some major differences in the amperages as we go. Maybe when I come in the mornings and top off the electrolyte, we'll go ahead and touch on that. But for the most part, this should be the last segment of this video until we get to next Saturday and are able to pull our final results. So shy of getting the bars weighed up and getting them in there and getting her all going, that's what's next. All right, so I went ahead and weighed the bars that I've got, and I did it in grams this time so we can hopefully get a more accurate reading. I've also labeled the bars when I put them into the containers so we know where we've got the right bars and the right ones. These are all relatively close in weight to each other. The reason that I did it this way is I have number 1 cell, which has the greatest surface area, has the largest bar in it, and number 2, which has the smallest surface area, I put the smallest bar in. And I did that because the surface area, hopefully it'll be more accurate rather than having the biggest bar in the smallest pot. So if we come back over here to the cells, so there you can see we've got everything set up and ready to go. We're going to put the cap on that one. Keep the contamination out. So I've already set my power supplies to 2 volts. I disconnected them from the cell. I set them. So basically we're going to turn this one on. We're at 2 volts. We want 5 amps. We'll get our feed going. And we're starting with 2 volts. And we're working our way up to 0.9 amps, which, like I said, ideally on this cell, we'd like to be running somewhere in the neighborhoods of 13 amps. But that's not going to happen with these power supplies. And we'll go over to this one, turn this one on. This one's live right away. And we've got our 2 volts. This one's kind of climbing up a little too. Just, there we go, 1 amp. And we're at 0.918. 91992. So these will hopefully continue to climb as they run. I don't see them potentially climbing that high. Again, I would like to see this up by the 5 amp mark if I can get it there, but we're going to try to do this with 2 volts. And if I see a significant change in that amperage at some point in time, I will definitely bring you back out and show you. But at this point in time, we're going to let them go for a week. Next Saturday, we will go ahead and get a yield on them and see how effective this process really is scientifically now, because we're internet scientists. So, all right, we will see you next Saturday with the totals. Okay, it's day what seems like 612 of this experiment, and quite frankly, if nothing else, I've learned what not to do. So I was playing around with voltages and amperages and things like that, and really wasn't getting any plating done, as you can see through the progression of this video. The last few days I bumped this up, so we were running
about 1.5 amps, and that's when we actually started getting plating. When I originally set these copper cells up, I ran about 2.5 amps. My goal was to try to kind of eliminate these dark rings at the top, which we learned earlier in the video comes from high voltage. So I was trying to keep that voltage down, and it will not plate out at the lower voltages. From what I'm seeing here, we're going to have a minimum of 2 amps to run this. And I guess if we're having that darker ring up on the top from quote-unquote burning the copper, that's fine. It's still pure copper. It isn't hurting anything, so just it doesn't look as nice. And it doesn't really matter because I'm melting this down anyway into bars. But as you can see, there's quite a bit missing off of the bar. And I'm not actually going to weigh these out because the experiment's null and void. Just too much playing around had to occur to get to this point. And maybe I'll rerun the yield experiment later. Right now I want to get some of this copper toned down, and I have other videos I need to shoot. So yeah, that's where we ended up. I'm going to go ahead and harvest these cells. I'm going to go ahead and set them back up, and we're going to go ahead and I'm going to run them back at my 2 amps where I was. I guess the voltage is what the voltage is. So that will be the end of this video. It was a long one. One of the things that we learn when we experiment is not everything works all the time. And it's a learning process. It's a learning process for me, you, everybody who does this. If you're not learning, you're not trying. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying. So I will leave you with this. I'm going to harvest these. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, happy scrapping.